Recording in progress.
How you doing, Ivy? Are we okay? Let's see what is this here? Oh no. Maybe put this higher. 1 second. Yeah, that's how's that about this go over here, maybe. You have to be a technician to give a class these days. 100%. That's better. Okay. All right, Rabotai, Boker Oro Mevorach, welcome. Today we're broadcasting from our studios at the North Pole, Miami Beach, Surfside. Feels like the North Pole, to be honest with you. But nonetheless, it's good to be here. So today we're studying Parashat Vaera. Now, I want to make it very clear. The Friday Parashat class is different than, let's say, the Shabbat Parashat class. On Fridays, we like to study the Parashat Be'iyun. We like to go deep. It's not for people that came to hear stories on the Parashat. I'll tell you from now, it's not for you. This is not Bible stories, the Friday. We like to study the Pesukim and study it according to the commentators and come out with some novel ideas, just to understand the simple interpretation of the text. Now, the pasuk that I'm going to quote you today is in Vaera, and I'm sure it's neglected. We read it very quickly, and we don't pay too much attention to it. However, there is a big talk on it. If you have a Chumash in front of you, so today's talk begins on Perek Vav, and it's Pasuk Chaf, 620. All right, it talks about a marriage, probably the most consequential marriage in the history of the world, outside of Adam and Hava. This has to be the most significant marriage that produced the most consequential results in the history. The results of this marriage are none other than Aharon HaKohen, Miriam HaNevi'ah, and Moshe Rabbeinu. These obviously are the three greatest biblical characters. At least Moshe Rabbeinu was Adon Kol HaNevi'im, the greatest of all prophets. Aharon is the first Kohen Gadol, and of course Miriam is the great woman prophetess. So it tells us about the marriage of their parents. Pasuk Chaf. Vayikach Amram et Yocheved dodato lo leisha ותלד לו את אהרון ואת משה. ושני חיי עמרם 37 ומעט שנה. So the pasuk comes and tells us that Amram married a girl or a lady called Yocheved. Who was Yocheved? Dodato. Dodato means it's his aunt. Now, normally when the Torah uses the word aunt, it means that the lady that married your uncle. So it means really that's called the Doda. Doda is, again, really the uncle is the one that's related to you. Let's say your father's brother's wife. So your father's brother's wife would be called Doda, the aunt. However, over here, the Torah is using the word Dodato not in the normal way that it normally uses it. Therefore, if you look at the Targum is the Unkelus, so he'll explain. Unsev Amram, means Nasib, he got married. Yat Yocheved Ahat Abuhi. Yocheved was Amram's father's sister. So let's review the relationship. So therefore, it's not married to his uncle. She's actually a real aunt. It's exactly real blood. Exactly. So go slow. It's a father's brother. Now let's get the history of Amram's family first. Amram is the grandson of Levi. So Levi, we know, was the son of Yaakov Abinu. Levi has a son called Kehat. Like the pasuk taught us in this week's Parashat, right? Uvnei Levi, Kehat. Now, Kehat actually has a sister. Kehat's sister is called Yocheved. So Kehat and Yocheved are sisters. Now, who is the son of Kehat? Amram. Amram ben Kehat ben Levi. So Amram marries his father's sister. And that's what that she says over here as well. Yocheved dodato. And that's why she has to go out of his way to tell us this. Ahat abuhi. I know what a doda is. Why does she have to go out and tell me what an aunt is? It's the last thing I need that she to come and tell me something that everybody knows what an aunt is. That she's bothered. Don't think it's an aunt through marriage. It's a real aunt directly. Which means what? Amram's father and Yocheved was sisters. Hazak Baruch. Okay, Rabbi Hananyara, but that's what I came really to tell you today. Most people don't know that. I think that's a big hadush in itself. Okay, we'll stay. We got nothing to do. All right, you need more. Okay, we'll give you more. Now that might sound it might sound strange to you, but before we go further, let's just try to figure out the real relationship between Amram and this lady called Yocheved. The pasuk says, if you go when Yocheved was born, the pasuk says, and I think it's in this week's Parashat. If you go a little earlier in the Parashat, the pasuk says, actually here when you get to the pasuk says, Asher yaleda ota lelevi b'Mitzrayim. That Yocheved was born in Mitzrayim. And it says, who gave birth to Yocheved? Asher yaleda ota Levi b'Mitzrayim. So Levi was her father. Question is, who was the mother? So the Mefarshim say that when the pasuk says Asher yaleda ota leLevi, Ota was actually the name of Levi's wife. Asher yaleda Ota, who gave birth to Yocheved? Ota. Now we always understand Ota, her. No, Ota is actually her name. That's the name of a lady. Ota. It's a good name for a lady. Today they would call them Oto, but in those days they called the lady Ota, which was supposed to be. They didn't have the gender. The Trump already finished that. So anyway, so he fixed it. So therefore, Asher yaleda Ota leLevi. So the Mefarshim point out Levi actually had two wives. Levi had a wife, we don't know her name, but that was the mother of Kehat. And then got married to another lady called Ota, and from Ota you had Yocheved. So it comes out that Yocheved and Amram are actually siblings. They're brother and sister from the same father, but not from the same mother. So they're paternal brothers and sisters. Fine, it's just to get the detail of it. All this doesn't make a difference to us whether it's paternal or whether it's maternal. It might make a difference if you're following Ben Noach law. If you're following the Noachide law, meaning Ben Noach, which is not the Torah law, it's the laws of Bnei Noah. It could be that a paternal brother and sister is permissible. So therefore, Amram did nothing wrong in Ben Noach world, let's say. If he's following the laws of a Noachides, you have the 7 mitzvot Ben Noach, they had laws, who they're allowed to marry, who they're not allowed to marry. But their laws are not as strict as our laws. And therefore, according to the law of Ben Noach, it might have been permissible for Amram to marry Yocheved because they were not full brother and sister. They were only paternal. They were half, and therefore it could be okay. But that shouldn't concern any of us because we know already, we have a rule that the Avot and the Tzaddikim, they kept the entire Torah before it was given. Even though the Torah was not given yet. But they knew Beruach HaKodesh, they knew in divine inspiration that the Torah is going to be given, so they lived on a high standard, even though it was not yet mandated. How do I know this? We have a few proofs. Number one, in Parashat Toledot, when it mentions Avraham Abinu's religious level, the pasuk says, "Ekev asher shama Avraham bekoli." Avraham listened to my voice. Vayishmor mishmarti mitzvotai hukotai v'torotai. He kept my mitzvot. He kept my torot. He kept my hukim. Is it mitzvot? Is it hukim? Is it torot? It's 1,000 years before Matan Torah. Avraham Abinu had divine inspiration, and he knew what was going to be given, and therefore he didn't wait for the Torah to be given. He actually kept it before it was actually given. There's a big question. If Avraham Abinu kept the whole Torah before it was given, so why didn't he circumcise himself much younger? Why did he wait until he was 99 years old to receive the commandment of circumcision? He must have known that there was circumcision. I mean, if you went to Avraham's house, he prayed shacharit. He put on tefillin. How many tefillin did he put on? He put on tefillin dashi. He put on the benutam. If you went, he saw he was wearing a talet gadol. He had an eruv around his house. Avraham Abinu kept every single law. And if you went to his house on Erev Yom Tov, you'd see eruv tafshilin. He would have the egg and he had the piece of bread, preparing himself for the holiday. If you went to Abraham's house on Pesach, he gave you matzah. If you went to his house on Sukkot, he sat on the sukkah. The Gaon of Vilna said, how do I know Avraham Abinu sat on the sukkah? So if you look in the pasuk, it says, "V'Adonai v'Avraham zaken, v'Abba yamim, v'Adonai berach et Avraham bakol." God blessed him with everything. So the Midrash writes, "Bakol." From here we see Avraham sat in the sukkah. Where do you see the word bakol that he sat in the sukkah? Because if you look in the Parashat that talks about Sukkot, there's 3 pesukim. Pasuk 1. Basukot teshvu shiv'at yamim. That's bet. Kol ha'ezrach b'Yisrael yeshvu besukot. Pasuk number 3. Lema'an yid'u dorotechem ki basukot hoshavti. Rashi tevot bakol. So the Gaon of Vilna says, he broke it down. He says, "V'Hashem berach Avraham bakol mikan shekiyem mitzvat sukkah." Gematria bakol. He kept every single mitzvah in the Torah, and not only did he keep it, but he taught. Oh, so you're going to ask me a question. So why didn't he keep the Brit Milah? Oh, so that's a good question. So that's one answer. One answer they say is because if he's going to do the mitzvah before he gets commanded, so therefore you get credit, but you don't get as much credit if you wait until you actually command it. So all the other mitzvot you can do twice. So I'll do it now, and when Hashem commands me, I'll do it again. But as you know, Brit Milah, you can only do once. So therefore he waited until God would command him in order to have an extra mitzvah of mitzvah, meaning he's doing the mitzvah with extra credit. There's another answer that we once gave, that which is a simple answer. Avraham Abinu, he also kept away from sins. So not only is he doing the positive commandments, but he's also keeping away from the negative. Now we have a halakha that says one is not allowed to mutilate his body. You can't just take a knife and start cutting yourself and causing yourself to bleed. That's called habura. Habura is forbidden. So until he gets a mitzvah to do the Brit Milah, he's not allowed to cause himself to make a habura, to cause himself to bleed, because he has a problem on the other side of it, which is the only reason why we're allowed to do Brit Milah, and we're not worried about that you're letting blood from an 8-day-old child, because God said it's okay. Had God not commanded us to do Brit Milah, you cannot just go now to a kid and start cutting him up and causing him to bleed. This was considered a habura. So therefore Abraham had to wait in order for God to command him so he can override the law of habura. So far, so good. And not only did Abraham Abinu keep the whole Torah, but he taught it to his children. And he taught it to his family. Like the Pasuk says, God says, I love Abraham. Ki yida'tiv. Ki yida'tiv means I love him. Why do I love him? Lema'an asher yitzaveh et banav et bnei beto acharab. Because he commands and directs his children and his household to follow his ways. That means he taught them all the laws. So Yitzhak Avinu had the tradition. Yaakov had the tradition. Yaakov taught the tradition to his children, to Levi. Levi told it to Amram. So they all knew the halachot. So the question then becomes, so if that's the case, what is the Torah law about marrying an aunt? We have to check this out. I have no opinion. Let's open up the Chumash. And if you open up in Vayikra, this is the Parashat actually that we read on Yom Kippur. In Parashat Aharemot and Kiddushim, it's written twice. I'm going to read you in Kiddushim for a minute. Kiddushim, if you have it in front of you, it's Vayikra, Perek Chaf, Pasuk Chaf. So the pasuk is very clear. I don't think there's any doubt over here. Ve'ish asher yishkav et dodato ervat dodo gila hetam yisa'u. It's a sin. Ve'ish asher yishkav et dodato. Maze dodato is aunt. Now this is talking about even if it's an aunt married to your uncle, all the more so if it's an actual blood aunt, biological aunt. So for sure, according to the Torah, what Amram did is forbidden. Now this is to me incredible. That means you came from a kosher marriage. And Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom comes from a marriage that, at least today, would not be sanctioned. Now I understand it's before the Torah was given. So this pasuk in Kiddushim was not given yet, but I did explain to you that they did keep the whole Torah before it was given. So you think that when it comes to getting married, I mean, they would be careful who they're going to marry. And over here, it comes out that we would not accept today. If Amram would come with Yocheved today to the rabbinical council, we'd say, Haz v'shalom. And we'd make an announcement, no rabbis can go to this wedding, no caterers, they're not making a Shalei Sion, they would not be able to have any benefits, no nothing. We would put a herem. The rabbi would get up on Shabbat and say, Rabotai, this week in the community, we had a tragedy. Amram married Yocheved. What do you mean? It's an aunt. Yeah, this is what he did. He didn't listen to us. And the rabbi says, where does it say it's forbidden? Look, very good. Well, I know the answer. All these questions I'm sketching around. I know the answers to these questions. This is a rhetorical question. When I need your help, I'm going to call on you. Don't worry. You're not wrong. The Ramban comes along and says that the Avot, they kept the Torah selectively, specifically when they were in Eretz Israel. Because Eretz Israel is considered the palace of the king, and that's where Hashem's presence is. But when they were outside of Eretz Israel, they were a little more flexible. Now, we don't have that leverage today to come along and say, we only keep the Torah in Brooklyn. When we come to Florida, okay, then let's ready. We sketch around for a couple of weeks, then we come back to Brooklyn, then we don't have the right to come along now and decide which zip codes we want to keep the Torah, which zip codes we want to be a little lenient. Okay, 2 months in the summer, 07723. Okay, listen, summer deal. It's not Brooklyn. Shabbat, bicycles, more motorbikes. When we come back to Brooklyn, we put on our black hats again, we put on our suit. Now, you can't do that. Which means today, the Torah applies to all zip codes, all times. But before the Torah was given, they had rights to, for whatever reason they decided, in Chutz La'aretz they were lenient. And therefore that would answer this question, because where was Amram when he married Yocheved? In Egypt. So they were the Mitzrayim, so therefore they didn't have to follow the strict law. But over here, I want to bring to your attention a very, very important Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra is in Parashat Kiddushim. And he makes a point over here. He says, Lo hizkir onesh ahot ha'av. If you look in Parashat Kiddushim, all these laws are called the laws of Arayot. Arayot are the forbidden relationships. And all these forbidden relationships are punishable by the most severe punishment, karet. However, Ibn Ezra points out that there's two of the arayot, of the forbidden relationships, in Parashat Kedoshim that the Torah does not tell us the punishment. And what are they? Lo hizkir onesh achot ha'av. Doesn't mention the punishment of marrying your father's sister. It's forbidden. But the Torah doesn't say karet. Let me explain to you, Rabotai. זה לא כרת, לא כתוב ונכרתה הנפש. No, ערירים ימותו means they'll die without children, but that's not the way the Torah says karet. The Torah's way it says karet is v'nichreta ha'isha. Look. Go back. Go to the pasuk Yud Zayin. V'ish asher yikach את אחותו, בת אביו, בת אמו, ורת ערוותה, ויתרא את ערוותו, חסר ונכרתו לעיני בני עמם. Next pasuk, v'ish asher ישכב את אישה דביו, וגידת ערוותה מגורה היא, ונכרתו שניהם. The Torah knows how to write ונכרתו. Over here it does not mention the word karet by Achotav. So the Ibn Ezra is questioning. Why not? And then he says he found another place. Exactly. Vegam lo hiskir klal onesh shte achayot. Two sisters does not mention. So the Ibn Ezra, it's a good observation. Why? The Torah knows how to write karet. By the way, in Parashat Kedoshim, every pasuk, v'nichrat, v'nichretu, v'nichrat ma'ama, v'nichrat. These two items, the aunt and two sisters, no mention of v'nichrat. Says Ibn Ezra, the answer. V'hamaskil yavin. If you're a maskil, if you're an intelligent person, you'll understand it. Okay, we're not doing so good. Gam devrei hakabbalah emet. So he says, you have to trust we have a tradition. And the tradition is that we know these things are punishable by karet. But that doesn't come from the Pesukim. We have a Gemara that says clearly that these are karet. So the Kabbalah is emet. But to know why it's not mentioned, a maskil yavin. So Ibn Ezra, maybe there was a shortage of ink, I don't know exactly, but he doesn't give you the answer. He said, listen, you're an intelligent guy. I don't have to tell you everything. You're bright. Figure it out. And that's the Ibn Ezra. So now I went to search, because I'm not the maskil that the Ibn Ezra is talking about. So I need to search. Anybody's going to give me the reason. So I found something incredible. I found over here an opinion of the Da'at Zekinim, Meba'alei HaTosafot, on our parasha, Shemot Vav, Vayikach Amram, our parasha. Midrash, he says, Lefi shenolad Moshe me'achot av. Moshe was born from a relationship that his father married his aunt. Lachen lo nichtav karet be'ervat dodato mepene kevodo. So out of respect for Moshe Rabbeinu, we're not going to write karet. The Gemara will tell it to you, but if you open the Chumash, because you have to preserve the kavod of Moshe Rabbeinu. What are you going to tell me over here? Ze karet? You say, who did such a thing? I don't want to say, but Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Hashem was a product of such a. So therefore, in order to preserve the respect and the dignity of Moshe Rabbeinu, so therefore it doesn't say. And then the Mefarshim say that that's the same reason why it doesn't write it by two sisters, in order to preserve the respect of Yaakov Avinu, alav shalom. Because Yaakov Avinu married two sisters. He married Rachel Beleam. According to the tradition, they were two sisters. And that's what the Ibn Ezra means. Maskil Yavin. A person tells you, figure out why we didn't write this over here. There's two great tzaddikim over here. And we know that they didn't make Avirot, by the way. The Gemara in Baba Batra on Yud Zayin says that Amram is one of four people that only died be'otyo shel nahash. He only died because of the sin of Adam Rishon. He didn't have any sins himself. And we know that because this is not considered a sin. There was no Torah. And according to Ben Noah, it was mutar because it's only a paternal sister. However, since later on it's going to be forbidden, so the Da'at Zekinim says to protect the tzaddikim, the Torah does not want to write their sins. The only problem that I have with this is a few questions. First of all, what are we preserving them from? It wasn't forbidden. I mean, he didn't do anything that was forbidden. He was allowed to marry his aunt at that time. So what are you telling me? Because of the future? So the future. Ba'asher Usham, right now, was it permissible? Of course it's permissible. So therefore, before the Torah was given, was it permissible to eat a ham sandwich? It was permissible. So I ate it when it's permissible. Later on, it came asur. What happened at Matan Torah? After they forbade all these items, they had to kosher their pots. Because before that, that's the reason why we eat dairy on Shavuot. Why do we eat dairy on Shavuot? Because all their pots were not kosher. Because they had all meat and hazir and who knows what they were eating before. Basar b'halav and all that. So the only thing they were able to eat quickly was to make cheese, cold food, and from the cow. That's why we have dairy. So that means what? And nobody has a problem. Before Matan Torah, they didn't eat kosher. What should we do? That's what they ate. Oh, in Mitzrayim, I don't know what they ate. They had glad kosher Bet Yosef in Mitzrayim. We have a hard time now today getting Bet Yosef. You think they had it in Mitzrayim? Besides in the house of Yosef itself. But the point is, my question is, what's the problem? Why are we trying to preserve Amram's respect? It's as if he did something wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. It's called the Matan Torah. And even if you're going to say that, well, later on it's going to be forbidden, so therefore it smells. Well, guess what? You're not really preserving the respect because the Torah clearly writes that it's asur. In Parashat Acharemot, it didn't hide that fact. And if you really want to protect it, don't tell me at all. Don't tell me about an aunt and don't tell me about two sisters. Keep it for the some Zohar that I'll have to find it from a Mikubal. But the Torah is not hiding it. So therefore, the Torah writes the sin. And guess what? Everybody knows in third grade that somebody that goes with the aunt is karet. So it's not like they covered it up so good. Everybody knows the punishment is karet. So you tell me, oh, but we didn't write it. Okay, you didn't write it. But guess what? We all know the halakha is karet. So therefore, this is really the question of the Abarbanel. He questions this opinion that says, no, we're doing it to cover up the tzaddik, what he did, Amram. First of all, the Torah didn't cover it up. The Torah actually writes that marrying an aunt is forbidden. You're covering up the punishment? You're really not covering up the punishment. Anybody who knows how to open up a Gemara, what's the Mefinush? It says karet. And guess what? Even if they were trying to cover it up, we blew it because today we revealed it to the whole congregation. So now everybody knows exactly what it says. So we have to understand in depth, what does it mean that the Torah is hiding the punishment in order to preserve the respect of Amram? And obviously the Ibn Ezra said, Maskil Yavin. So obviously there's something deep over here. There's not something easy just to cover it up. You have to be very, very intelligent. So I'd like to offer to you today something that I saw brought down from the Maharal from Prague. Maharal from Prague writes in his Sefer Gur Aryeh. Gur Aryeh, he says the following in Sefer Bereshit Perek Mem Vav. He writes the following. We have a Gemara in Pesachim. The Gemara says that when Mashiach comes, they're going to make a big seudah, a big banquet. And they're going to have delicious food. They're going to have special meat called shor habar. They're going to have special fish called leviathan. They're going to have special wine. That's from the times of Adam Arishon. And then they're going to have fruit for all people that don't trust the Mashiach's kashrut. They're going to have a fruit for the people that don't say, who's the Mashiach? Vegan, for the people that don't trust it. There's always one guy that says, no, I don't eat that. I don't trust the Mashiach. But Mashiach, yeah. I'm better than Mashiach. Anyway, so at the end of the Seudah, they're going to make zimun. So they're going to take the course and they're going to go to Avraham Abinu. Say, Avraham, the father of our nation, Chavod, zimun. Abraham's going to say, thank you very much, but you know, Ishmael, half the United Nations I'm responsible for, all the Arab League. Abraham, I'm not worried. Give it to Yitzhak. My son Yitzhak said, give it to Yitzhak. Yitzhak says the other half of the United Nations is from Arab from Esav. What are you talking about? I also have the same Avon. Give it to Yaakov. Baruch Hashem, he's the Israeli ambassador, one ambassador. There's something, all 12 children, all kiddushim. So Yaakov Avinu says, you know, my kids are all good, Baruch Hashem. There's no Yishmael, no Esav, but I married two sisters. Yeah, but it's permissible when you marry two sisters. You know, but you know, in the future, later on, give it to somebody else. Finally, they end up giving it to David HaMelech, and David HaMelech says, Kosh Yeshua, Esau, fine. So you see over here, says the Maharal, Yaakov was embarrassed that he married two sisters. So much so, I mean, I understand why Abraham's embarrassed of Yishmael. That's, listen, you brought Yishmael to the world. It's something to be embarrassed of. I understand why Yitzhak's embarrassed of Esav. It's something to be embarrassed. Esav is Hitler. But I don't understand Yaakov. Why are you embarrassed? Whoever was giving the cost to Yaakov should have told him, listen, Yaakov, Hakam Yaakov, when you married your two sisters, there was no Torah. Permissible. Why was he embarrassed, says the Maharal? So he gives two interpretations. One interpretation he says is like this. He says, yeah, of course it was permissible. It was only permissible because they didn't get the Torah yet. So it was an embarrassment that they weren't worthy to get the Torah. How come we didn't get the Torah? The Zohar Kadosh says really the Torah was supposed to be given much earlier. In the times of Noah, the Torah was supposed to be given. And instead of giving the Torah, they weren't worthy. Hashem brought a flood instead. That's why when it says, whenever there's supposed to be, let's say, a flood of knowledge into the world, if the knowledge doesn't come into the world, then the knowledge turns into water, because in Maim ila Torah. So therefore, it was supposed to be a time for the wisdom. They weren't worthy. The wisdom turned into water and flooded the whole world. That's why when they were giving the Torah at Har Sinai, the people felt that there's going to be another flood. The people in the world at the time of Matan Torah felt there's going to be a flood because they felt the same energies coming down. Who felt it? Bil'am. So they came to Bil'am and they said, Adonai lemabud yashav. Hashem's coming to bring another mabuz. No, Adonai oz la'amo yitin. Hashem's giving the Torah. This is not going to be a flood like the last time. This is the flood waters of Torah itself. In any event, what do you see from over here? He says, really, Torah should have been given early. So the embarrassment is Yaakov Avinu said, if we were worthy, I would have had the Torah in my time. And if I would have had the Torah in my time, then I wouldn't have been allowed to marry two sisters. So I know I was allowed. But why was I allowed? Because there was no Torah. That we didn't have a Torah in our generation. Understand the Busha? The Busha is not that he married two sisters. That was permissible. The Busha is exactly. Why was he allowed to marry two sisters? Because you didn't have the Torah. This is a... Not so far, but they didn't have a commandment yet. So therefore, that was the Busha, that we weren't worthy yet to receive it. So basically he's saying, I lived Kodem Matan Torah. Let me give it to somebody else. David lived after Matan Torah. That's already a higher level. That's Maharal. But then he gives a second interpretation, which is the interpretation that he prefers. This is the one that he rather. This is the second interpretation. And what does he say? The Maharal. He says something deep. He says, Yaakov Abinu alav Shalom. Obviously, he was allowed to marry the two sisters. And probably Avraham Abinu told them already from before, don't worry, we're going to have to do this to bring Klal Yisrael into the world. Although we keep the Torah, but sometimes we have to, since we're only keeping it voluntarily, so sometimes we have to, suspend it temporarily in order to fulfill Piriyah v'Riviyah, whatever the reason. So he says, but did Abraham have to marry two wives? Or two sisters? No. That means Abraham, he didn't need to do that. He didn't have to suspend the Torah's law. He was able to marry two regular wives, no problem. Sarah and Hagar, there's no issue in that. Yitzhak Avinu, did he have to suspend any of the laws? No. Yitzhak Avinu married Rivka, finished. Yaakov felt that already it takes away a little from his level the fact that he was the one that had to do something, although he had to do it, but it takes away from the Madrigah the Tzaddik a little. It's something that his grandfather didn't have to do, and it's something his father didn't have to do, even though it was permissible, but he had to do it. And therefore, it's something that it might take a little away from the Madrigah the Tzaddik, that he had to do something that, listen, obviously he felt it, that he wasn't worthy to make the Zimun because of this. So it's a I don't want to say a blemish on the tzaddik, but the tzaddik feels enough musha that, listen, I had to do it. This is what Hashem told me to do. I didn't make any isur. That's the way Hashem wanted me to bring the children into the world, without a doubt. But the fact that I needed to do this way and my grandfather didn't and my father didn't, that means it's a little... Why did I have to compromise my level for this? Obviously, I'm not to forgive the zimun to somebody else. Understand what I'm saying? By the way, don't take what I'm saying lightly. The Hiskuni writes that one of the reasons why Moshe Rabbeinu did not go into Eretz Yisrael is because he was born from a marriage that would be forbidden from the Torah. So you see, it has a, even though it's called the Matan Torah, but there's something there. So now, once we understand this I saw based on the writings of a Rabbi Kuperman. His name is Rabbi Kuperman. He wrote a sefer called Peshuto Shel Mekra. Very brilliant rabbi, alav Shalom. And he explains things in a very, very, very deep way to explain the Peshat. I recommend it. Again, the sefer is Rabbi Kuperman, Peshuto Shel Mekra. They have it in English and they have it also in Lashon HaKodesh. I have both, Baruch Hashem. You can get it probably online. You can find. So this is what he says. The big hadush now, he's going to say. He says he found the Netziv. The Netziv, Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. He wrote a sefer called Emek Halacha on the Tosefta, on the She'eltot. And he says over there that not all karets are equal. Hadush. Not all karets are equal. Sometimes the Torah will say, hikaret tikaret. It'll say it in a double language. Sometimes the Torah will only say it, v'nechrat, in a single language. Is there a difference between hikaret tikaret and v'nechrat? He says, yes. When the Torah says it in a double language, it means that there's going to be a karet ba'olam hazeh, ba'olam haba. In this world and the next world. When the Torah just says v'nechrat, it's either in this world or in the next world. So therefore, there's a big hadush saying. Before I read this, I thought all karets are equal. Just like all type O blood is equal. And all, red apples are the same. And everything is unified. When it comes to over here, karets, no. By the way, is there two types of sikila? No, stoning is one type of stoning. They take the guy, they throw him off the roof, and they throw a rock on his head. It's the same rock, it's the same height, it's the same people that throw him off. Is there two types of chenek? They put a string around his neck. They pull from both sides. There's no, well, you're going to give a bigger one, a smaller one. There's a standard way that the Torah has its punishments. We don't change it each time. But when it comes to karet, yesh karet v'yesh karet. So Rabbi Koopman says a big hadush. He says, well, maybe we could add 2 more levels of karet. The Tzib doesn't say this, but he says he's saying it. Sometimes the Navi will mention karet. The Navi. It mentions in the Navi. So he says it could be if the karet is mentioned in the book of the prophets, it's a lower level karet. Because it's not a karet that's written in the Torah itself. For example, Harambam writes that even though something is asur min Torah, if it's not written explicitly in the Torah, there's no malkut. So, for example, on halakha Moshe Sinai, it's halakha Moshe Sinai, it's min Torah, it's from Sinai, but it's not written explicitly, there's no punishment. So you see, when something is written in the Torah, it makes it more severe. If it's not written in the Torah, it's less severe. So Rabbi Kuba says a big hadush. Once the Torah does not write karet by an ant, and it's only derived from the Torah Sheba'al Peh, that means it's a lesser karet. It's not the same karet as hikaret to karet, v'nichrat, because it's not written. It comes out as 4 levels of karet. You ready for the 4 levels? Level number 1, it's written in the pasuk, hikaret to karet. That's the worst one. That's ben ba'olam hazeh, ben ba'olam haba. Second one, v'nichrat. That's written in the Torah. That's either olam hazeh, olam haba. That's also serious. Then you have the karet of the Navi. And then you have the lowest of the karets, a karet that's not written, not in the Torah Shebichtav, not in the Navi, and the only place where you know it is from where? From the Gemara. And what's an example of that? Marrying two sisters and marrying an aunt. Which means it comes out according to this. Because Yaakov Avinu was on such a high level, and because Amram was on such a high level, the Torah, when Hashem wants to allow them to marry somebody, he chose the lowest of the karets in order to show how great their level was. So it's not an embarrassment. On the contrary, it's a shebach to the tzaddik. That why did God could have brought Moshe into the world, or he could have brought the Shabbatim in anyway. Why did he choose in a certain marriage that the karet is not written? That shows you the level that the avot of Yaakov and Amram were on. Because they were on such a high level, Hashem did not want them to transgress something that eventually would be forbidden on the highest level. On the contrary, it's something that's not going to be written explicitly in the Torah. Am I saying it clear enough? I'm going to say clear enough. No, I'm not expecting you to fall out of your chairs on such a hadush, because it's a nuanced hadush. Definitely, when the tzaddik has to do something that's eventually will be forbidden, it's a pigam. It does something. But Hashem says do it, so therefore they have to do it. I don't want to say the word pigam. It's not a pigam. It's not a pigam. I take that word. It's not a pigam. There's something there. There's something there. I mean, like I told you, the Haskuni said Moshe couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael because of that.
Like a stain.
I mean, listen, Yaakov didn't want to make zimun because of that. Something is there because Yaakov, it's a little because Yaakov didn't want to make zimun because, don't take my word, he said it. I don't want to make zimun because I married two sisters. So there must be something. But you see, from the fact that the Torah doesn't write the karet, that's to show you the kavod of the tzaddik. And that's what the Dad Zekinim says, that it didn't write karet to protect the kavod of his, not to embarrass him, because to say, oh look, he did something that was a sur karet. We know it's a karet, so you didn't help me. I know it already, and therefore you're not protecting his kavod. No, it's protecting the kavod. The fact that the Torah did not write the karet, it shows you that it's such a small. It's the smallest of the karets. Out of the 4 karets that we have, this is the smallest one. Now, why would the Torah say to Yaakov? Because since he was on a high level, the only item we would let him transgress before the Torah was given is this, because he was on such a high level. And we see that from the fact that the Torah did not write it. The fact that the Torah did not write it is a praise to the tzaddik, because that shows you that this karet is not the same degree of karet as the other ones. And that's what the Ibn Ezra means, maskil yavin. The maskil will appreciate that by the Torah not writing karet by dodato, by the Torah not writing karet by shtei achayot, it's out of the respect to Moshe and the respect of Amram and the respect of Yaakov. What means the respect? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, listen, even though it's before Matan Torah, and even though I'm going to make it permissible, but I'm going to only allow these tzaddikim to do something that's the minimal amount of karet possible. Maybe for somebody else that wasn't on the level, that's listen, you can even marry a full-fledged sister. It doesn't matter. But it says karet the Torah before Matan Torah. Don't worry. There the pigam would be much bigger. But since Yaakov and Amram on such a high level, and therefore the Torah is coming to say that's the kavod of the tzaddik. The fact that Hashem would only allow them to marry something that was permissible now, and even when it's going to be forbidden, it's only going to be forbidden with a karet that's not written explicitly. It's only Torah Shema, which is the smallest of them. That's the shema of the tzaddik. Somebody less than Yaakov and Amram, God would have told them, go marry your mother. What's the difference? But it says it's a big deal. Your madrega. Before Matan Torah, it could be that was forbidden anyway because of Ben Noah. I'm giving you an example. But my point is, he would have told him, go marry anybody. That doesn't matter. But for the tzaddik, even though at the time it was permissible, but since later on it's going to be forbidden, and even when it's going to be forbidden later on, it's only going to be isur from a karet of the Talmud. And the karet of the Talmud is not the same karet as the Navi, and it's not the same karet as clearly Torah Shebichtav, and therefore that's the Sheva of the Tzaddikim. So the question then becomes, did Yaakov Abinu and Amram do anything forbidden? Chas v'shalom. When the pasuk comes and says he took no dato, it was 100% legal. The last question then becomes, but why did Hashem have to do this at all? Why couldn't he just marry? I don't know, marry a girl from the Bet Yaakov? I mean, there wasn't a regular girl over there. What do you need to go? I mean, we have to have an hour and a half class with the thumbs this way and the thumbs that way. Explain it. How about we don't explain anything? How about we just tell Yaakov, go marry like your grandfather married, Sarah Imenu? Well, she wasn't a sister of two sisters. Why can't he marry like his father, Rivka? So the Mefarshim say, and I saw this brought down also, I think, by the Rikanati, he says that anytime we're bringing in great neshamot into the world, so you need to bring it in a way where you bypass the interference of the Satan. Exactly, which means the Satan, he's always looking for these nuclear neshamot. He has binoculars all day long looking where these neshamot going to come from. So anytime he sees that there's a chance that a nuclear neshama is going to come into the world, he sabotages it. So that's why Hashem made the world. Hashem made the world. He created the Satan, and the Satan, we have to deal with him. Now, Hashem could have made it that the Satan is blind and deaf and dumb, and then we don't have to deal with him. But Hashem didn't make it that way. We got to deal with this guy. And he's always on the prowl looking for the neshamot of tzaddikim. So, for example, he's looking for the neshama of Mashiach. That's his main item. You know why? Because it says when Mashiach comes, the first thing he's going to do is kill the Satan. So therefore, it's self-preservation. So therefore, he doesn't want to die. So therefore, he says, I know that the Mashiach is going to come, and I know that it's going to come from somewhere, and therefore I have to be very, 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 very on the lookout. So what does Hashem do? He tells Lot, one night he was in the cave, and he gives him some wine, because there was wine in the cave. You ever hear the wine called the cave? That's what they called the cave, because when Lot went into the cave, the Ma'ara, he found wine in the cave. Tell me, you ever went on a tour and you find wine in the cave with two glasses and the champagne, and it's not the Ritz Carlton over. It's a cave in the middle of Sodom. He walks in, there's wine. Now, I promise you, when they left Sodom, Lot wasn't an alcoholic. He didn't say, hey, let me get my bottle before I leave. That's not the, you get to take one item, you take your passport. You don't take your, even these guys in Palisades, they didn't take their wine with them. Even the biggest Lishayim, the movie star, they didn't take their wine with them. They took other stuff. They took their dogs. They didn't take their wine. So what is Lot doing with a bottle of wine in the cave? The Zohar Kadosh says, Gabriel Malach or Michael brought it there. Why? Because they're bringing Mashiach. They need to get him drunk, so he'll be with his daughters. Now, all of a sudden, Lot is with his daughters. Who's watching? The Satan. Satan's laughing. He's laughing. Incest. Leave it alone. And Borei Olam tells the Satan, you fool, I just brought Mashiach. You missed it. What do you mean? I thought this is Isur. It is Isur after Matan Torah. And maybe even before Matan Torah, this was Asur. But Hashem needed to bring the Mashiach. He wanted to bring the Mashiach. And therefore, he brought it this way. And the Satan was caught off guard. Good. By the time it was, he woke up, she was pregnant already. And who was in her stomach? Moab. Who's Moab? Ruth. Who's Ruth? The grandmother of Mashiach. Game over. And if you look at all the relationships, Ruth and Boaz, funny relationship. Yehuda and Tamar, funny relationship. All the relationships to bring Mashiach are going to come through the side door without. So says the Rikanati, the same thing when it comes to Moshe. How are you going to bring Moshe into the world? I think it's so simple. The Satan has surveillance. Forget about it. To stop Moshe. Because if you don't stop Moshe, then you have, now forget about Yetziat Mitzrayim, you have Matan Torah. And the last thing the Satan wants is the Torah. Why? Because the Gemara says, Barati Yetzirara, Barati Torah Tevani. What's the item that destroys the Yetzirara? The Torah. So therefore, if Moshe Rabbeinu gets born, that means that's the death of the Satan. Okay, one day, the Satan's looking, All of a sudden he sees Amram marry his aunt. And the Satan has Parashat Kedushim in front of him. Erva dodato lo tegale. Hatam Yisau. It's a hit. Now, Satan knows the Torah wasn't given yet. But he says, there's no way Hashem's going to bring the greatest man through a... It's got to come through a lady that comes from, like I said, the Bet Yaakov, and she comes from a family, and she has the... This is coming from an Isur, something that eventually become Isur. Anyway, what happened? Yocheved gets pregnant. Who's born? Moshe. All of a sudden, the Satan says, hey, how do you get here? How did he come from? Min Jeye. Shuzawatak. They tell me they was born from Yocheved. But I thought it was soon. You missed it. Just like you missed Lot and his daughters, you missed this one too. So he says it was a subterfuge in order to bring the tzaddikim and the Shabbatim through the back door. But nonetheless, we learned a lesson today. And in conclusion, that really the reason why the Torah did not write the karet is, I'm going to say clearer than I said it before. The fact that the karet is not written, that shows you it's a less of a karet than the other ones. And that shows you the madriga of the tzaddik, that Hashem would only allow them to do something of the lesser degree because of the high madriga. And that's lefi madrigatam, and that's what the Ibn Ezra means, hamaskil yavin, that it's to protect them, not to protect them that we're hiding the facts. We're not hiding the facts. We know exactly that's a karet, but what type of karet it is? It's a karet that the Torah does not write explicitly. And the God says, for the avot, that's as far as they can go. We cannot let them do anything more than that, albeit it is before Matan Torah. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Rabbi Yochanan Kasher Omer, Atzal Baruch Hu B'Sifik HaKerban, Masechot Torah ve'yadir, Yitkadam.
מתהדר, מתעלה, מתעלל, שרד לקודשה ואיכות, תעלה מן כל ברכתה, שירתה, שבתה ונחמתה, גם מאמר ומאמן, על ישראל, ועל רבנן, ועל תלמידי הון, ועל כל תלמידי תלמידי הון, סלפין ומעסקין, ורואה את הקדושה, די ואתה, די בפה ואתה ואתה, תראה ואמר ומאור ומאור שלמה, תהינה ותסלח, חייה ופר, ומזודר ופר ורחמי. מי כבודם אלוהים הרי שמיה והרם לברו אמן כדי שלמה רבה מן שמיה ויהי שרה וישועה ונחמה ושזבה